My talk today is about all the changes that have happened in data management and IT in general, and I'll focus on how they impact on records management. In particular, I'll just stress two areas that have quite a big impact, and that's the advent of new privacy laws like GDPR and the recent California CCPA. And the other one is the impact of analytics on records management. The first thing about privacy. Privacy regulations have pretty much turned IT upside down. And the remarkable fact is that most of us don't even realize it, not even the folks in IT. For example, enterprises, we usually assume, own the data. It's been that way forever. But with privacy laws, it's the exact opposite. It's the employees and others, outsiders, who own the data. They tell the enterprise to show data on demand, and then to control it, and then to delete it. We haven't yet wrapped our heads around that. Number two, we've been forever dealing with data in silos. That's been that way for the last 7 decades. But with the privacy laws, it doesn't care about silos. When it makes a request or demand, it doesn't care if you have 10,000 data silos. You just have to produce across. The third one is that we've never really managed data across silos, only within silos. And now suddenly, with the new privacy regulations, you're obliged to across silos, and by definition, one silo doesn't know what the others have. So no one's really gotten their heads wrapped around this one either. And lastly, every application you have in your enterprise must now be privacy aware, GDPR aware. So in other words, you have to, reprogram every application to make sure they understand what's private data and what's not, and how to use it? We haven't answered that question either. As a matter of interest, I'd like to have a show of hands as to how many of you have actually gotten a privacy project started. Show of hands? Okay, that's an encouraging sign. So while we're trying to figure out the privacy issue, another trend has come about, which is the emphasis on analytics, which is complicating the privacy issue. Human analytics is coming to the fore, and it's dawning on us that we already collect all of this information for various governance purposes: emails, files, calendars, and so forth. We already have to manage them. What we haven't realized is that with that, you can pretty much infer a whole lot about your employees and players within. How much influence you have, how productive you are. This is really starting to bubble to the top. I'll cut to the chase here and give you one example. If you wanted to find out who your top performers are in the enterprise, it's actually fairly simple. With a few analytics on the pattern of your communications, you can identify them like so. And they actually pop up like Christmas lights. This is just giving you a peek as to what's coming down the pike. And if you want a larger view as to what's being done there, this is a sample of all of the use cases that have been proposed by large corporations. And every single one of them is impactful. It affects all departments and affects from the rank and file all the way up to the board of directors. For example, listed in there is something that'll turn on every board director if you talk with them. It's the issue of crisis management. When crisis hits, You need information, you need timely information, you need complete information. And if you had an instant replay button that tells you what happened anywhere in the enterprise at any time and who was involved and who said what to whom, that's pretty impactful. So analytics is certainly accelerating, but here's the kicker. What does it need? Well, for one, it needs data access restrictions and privileges, and that's, by the way, totally missing from today's paradigm of analytics. If you look at the analytics repository by Hadoop or whatever, you'll probably find very sensitive information there, emails from the CEO's office, HR reviews, legal contracts, and the like. And now, of course, you have to also watch out for private information. This has not yet been factored in, and it needs to be going forward. Analytics also needs deletion, because you can't keep everything. It also needs classification. It also needs audit trails, and it also needs governance. In other words, analytics needs records management and information governance, which is where we come in. Now, I'll give you a sense of what's happening in records and IG, the combination, the high-level view, and that is, this is the data universe, let's say. It's got everything jumbled in, the unstructured information, emails, the structured information from ERP, SAP, and so forth. Records traditionally has only been involved in what the narrow definition of business records like so. A small percentage, 2%, 3%, what have you. In recent years, that's expanded to important, relevant information, but falling outside the definition of business records. We call that non-records. But what's intriguing is that we need to absolutely take care of all of that white space around it, the remainder of the information, and that's quite a challenge. Why? Because we need to take care of all of these functions, such as governance, such as privacy, such as analytics. And what do we need to provide these functions? We need capabilities like retention, and that's a huge challenge. No one's going to keep everything, and no one's going to delete everything. So somewhere in between, there has to be a trade-off for every organization. And when you do have the retention, then you also have to have access privileges, restrictions, classification, audit trails. Does this sound familiar to you now? Basically, there is an absolute need for RIM. And the new scope of the records manager is really across the board. This means managing data volumes that are 1,000 times more than we're used to. In other words, we lift our sights from records to really information at large. Basically, going back to RIM, the I in RIM, information, in case we've forgotten. So let's take a look at how we see the convergence of all of these patterns, and I'll give you a very high-level view of what's happening. There is a convergence of data management already happening, from compliance to e-discovery, to records, to privacy, and on to structured information. All of that's converging. It was to converge, I think, 8 to 10 years out, but GDPR and privacy laws brought it forward. So basically, GDPR is a combination of all of these management functions. It's not so much about privacy, it's about information management. But I'll leave you with a thought that's even more intriguing. If we apply ourselves to making privacy a reality, and if privacy already encompasses all of these governance functions, basically, from GDPR, you can get the remainder, all of these governance functions included. Which also means that you could combine the ROI and the budget for all of these instead of having them separate, and you can actually save money for the organization. This is something that we're already trying to prove out, and it's quite a savings you can imagine. Instead of having all of these 5 or 6 silos, you can have just one. It also empowers you to operate on a much larger budget. So in closing, we've gone from records management to information management, and in order to cope with it, this is what I suggest for the records professional. Number 1, focus on the I, not the R. Number 2, upgrade your IT skills, because you're now talking about managing information that's 1,000 times to 10,000 times larger data sets. Number 3, upgrade your information analytics skills, and here I have some good news. Analytics is no longer that technical. The technology is becoming much easier to use, the virtualization tools and so forth. So the goal is to make the rank and file able to conduct analytics on their own. And number 4, I piggyback on some of the remarks made earlier. Information is not only an asset of the company, it is the most important, most valuable asset. And you should position yourself square in the middle of converting the information into the corporation's most valuable asset. So that pretty much sums up my presentation. Thank you very much.